This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello and welcome to the Twilight Show. Today I'm joined by a teacher who I've been connected to online for a long time, but I've never actually spoken to her before, Anna Loseva. Anna is an English teacher, university lecturer and master's student originally from Russia, but who has been living and working in Vietnam and who previously worked in Japan.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Twilight Show, everyone. I'm Graham Stanley, speaking to you live from Mexico City. On today's show, I'll be talking to Anna Loseva, teacher and university lecturer who has just started a second master's degree this year. As I mentioned earlier, I've been connected on social media to Anna for some time now, but we haven't had the opportunity to speak, so I'm very much looking forward to doing that today. After working as a primary and secondary school teacher for 2 years in Moscow, she worked for 5 years at Lomonosov Moscow State University, teaching general English, English for special purposes, and English for academic purposes to undergraduate and postgraduate students of physics. Whilst there, she created a website for English language department and physics faculty and helped create materials and textbooks for internal use of the faculty too. Anna's first home abroad was Japan, where she worked for 4 years teaching general English courses, and she also designed and taught 2 specific courses for students at a private international school in Tokyo, social media safety and a course about culture. As well as that, Anna taught for 3 years English discussion for 3 years at a private university in central Tokyo, where she became involved in teacher research, teacher development, and built a reflective practice community. She currently teaches academic skills and business communication at the International School of Business in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. And I'll be talking to Anna about all of this and more after the Teacher Talk Radio news.
It's time for a fresh start to language learning. Pearson EdXL's new student-centred French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills. Through inclusive and relatable content, the new Pearson EdXL MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. Find out more at go.pearson.com/MFL GCSE 24.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
It's the summer holidays for almost everyone, but apologies for those not quite finished yet. And the topic of money is not far from the thoughts of many. But Schools Week looks back at the year and reports that nearly 2/3 of schools increased the cost of pupil meals this year, and a large majority of schools have had to make cuts in other areas. The findings are taken from regular government surveys of school leaders and teachers, and results show that over 1/4 of schools say support with energy bills made no real difference to financial positions. The pressure of the cost of living crisis affected schools in several key ways. These included a rise in the cost of pupil lunches, which had to be passed on to many parents. Some schools also reported a decline in meal quality as providers attempted to reduce costs. Cuts to support staff and, in some cases, teaching staff. And schools struggled to comply with new statutory guidance on uniform, with many schools opting to introduce a second-hand uniform scheme to support parents. Recruitment pressures led to schools appointing non-specialist teachers for subjects such as history and technology, with many schools seeing this increased workload and stress. Send pressures also increased, with 87% of those surveyed citing lack of funds and access to specialist services as the key issue. The same publication also featured a story on exam fees, as AQA, England's largest exam board, announced increases for some of its most popular GCSE and A-level subjects, by as much as 16.5%. The changes will affect the 2024 series. The article features details of increases made by Edexcel and OCR too. Jeff Barton, General Secretary of the ASCL Union, responded by saying that this latest price hike will only serve to stretch budgets even further. Exam boards are obliged to notify Ofqual of any proposed fee increases. Ofqual monitors pricing for qualifications from the not-for-profit exam boards. The Guardian covered the nomination of Sir Martin Oliver as Ofsted's next Chief Inspector by Education Secretary Gillian Keegan. A pre-appointment hearing will take place in the autumn, but Ms Keegan said Sir Martin had demonstrated exemplary leadership and praised his work in areas of disadvantage as the Chief Executive of Outwood Grange Academies Trust. Sir Martin said he was hugely privileged to be nominated and that he would work closely with the whole sector to create the best systems in all areas. His promotion comes in spite of criticism, including from Ofsted inspectors, of his trust's record on pupil suspensions and exclusions. The article goes on to highlight the issues Sir Martin may find lurking in his in-tray if he is confirmed for a January 2024 start. These include the outcome of the inquest into the death of Ruth Perry and the calls for a full-scale review of the inspectorate, including the scrapping of single-word judgments. The inspection of children's services at a time when there is a high turnover of social workers and an over-reliance on agency workers who are having to deal with heavy caseloads. He will also have to deal with media and political pressures in a role which could see him regularly in the spotlight. Finally, the BBC reports that the government will break its own deadline to provide schools in England with guidance on policies for transgender pupils. The guidance has been promised before the summer break, but is delayed because the Attorney-General for England and Wales has advised parts of the guidance may be unlawful. The guidance was expected to address what schools should do if a child wanted to change their name or use different pronouns, and whether to involve parents. Ministers were considering advising against allowing social transitioning in schools after a 2020 report found that it was not a neutral act, and more information was needed about its outcomes. The Attorney-General, however, has said that an outright ban would be unlawful. Ministers now have to decide what to do next: compile lawful guidance or contemplate changing the law altogether. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
This is 2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello, this week we're going to talk about a couple of shortcuts and hacks that can make life a little easier. This may not be as innovative as some of my past life hacks for teachers, like drinking noodles, but here are a couple of things that may make a difference to your use of media in the classroom. First up, if you aren't already riding it, get on the Wakelet wave. Wakelet is a free way to save, organise and share content. Create collections of web pages, videos and basically anything with a web address under one topic. Once done, you have a shareable link to your collection. Use it to organise your lesson, flip a lesson or create revision collections, just to throw a few ideas out there. This next hack is one of my favourites. I love using YouTube to support learning. Not only can it help keep pace in a lesson, but also it's a great reference afterwards for pupils to refer to. My biggest gripe with it though is that pesky advert you can't skip that always decides to play when you're in full flow. Here's a secret that works nearly all of the time. When preparing your lesson, you will have watched the clip anyway to ensure it's appropriate, so just before you copy the link into your presentation or Wakelet, type this on the end: and t equals 1. That's the ampersand, or the wiggly and, lowercase t, equals, and the number 1. Now copy the URL with and t equals 1 on the end, and your clip will start 1 second in. Not missing any content, but skipping the adverts at the start. No need to thank me. Show your gratitude with a follow and tell us what you want to know about tech. I'm Steve Woods, and that was 2 Minute Tech.
2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome back, everyone, and a warm welcome in particular to my special guest, Anna Loseva. Hello, Anna. How are you today?
Hello, doing very well, thank you. It's Saturday late night, but I'm full of energy for our conversation.
Yes, early morning. Well, not so early for me, but early morning for me and late night for you. What time is it there where you are?
It's around 11, getting to 11 p.m. in Ho Chi Minh City.
Wow. So, Anna, I usually start by asking my guests to talk about how they became involved in education, how they became teachers. What was it with you? Well, what was it that attracted you to becoming a teacher, and how did you get started?
Before I get to that, thank you, Graham. I'll get
Sure.
to that. But I wanna say a little bit. Previously, you mentioned that we never met, which is true. We never met face to face.
That's right.
But I don't know if you would remember, probably not, how we got to meet online. It's kind of difficult sometimes to pin that down, pin that moment of getting to meet somebody online. And
please remind me.
I remember. Maybe it was 2011 or 2012. I was taking you and Paul Braddock. Remember
yes,
Paul?
Yes.
We're doing a online course on gamification. Something can't remember the details.
Okay, this was with the TESOL Electronic Village Online, maybe.
I think so. Yes, Electronic Village Online. They had many courses available,
right.
And for me at that time, I was really into technology, definitely more than now. Very enthusiastic. So I learned about gamification from you and Paul in that course.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great. I was trying to remember what our connection was, but I couldn't figure it out. So that's great to know. Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, it's always tough with online acquaintances, right?
Exactly. That's great to hear, though. Yeah, gamification I was very interested in quite some time ago, but it seems to have continued being popular with a large number of people, and it keeps coming back as something that people are attracted to. I guess you're not that interested in it at the moment, or not using it much at the moment?
No, not at all. But when we keep talking, I can return back to this idea as it reappeared.
Great.
The concept of gamification reappeared in my most recent study in a most unexpected moment.
Oh, wow.
But I can go back to you. Yeah. I can go back to your question about how I started.
Sure. Okay. So long as we don't forget to for you to tell us about the gamification bit later.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I'll try to remember.
I'll try and remember as well.
So I think it's true to say, like many teachers, maybe like I did not think that I want to be a teacher. I did not even think I was interested in education as such when I was 18, and I was making my choice which university to choose for study, and especially so that in middle school and high school I studied in a class which was specializing in maths and physics. So I sort of majored in maths and physics for 7 years.
Right.
And in fact, by high school, in Russia, high school was 2 years.
Yeah.
By then, I realized that I did not want to pursue my career in any areas related to that, or I would have to use that knowledge.
So you didn't you didn't want to be a mathematician or a physicist?
No, I did not want to be that. No. I did fairly well. Which helped me later, I think, in my next in my first big university job, but which we'll get to. But no, I think I was among very few, not the only, but maybe one of the 2 or 3 people from my class of 28 students who did not have a life related to math and physics and engineering and that sort of thing.
So did you drop out? Did you drop out, or did you complete the course and decide not to continue?
No, I completed. I took all exams. And then just as it was very funny, the last year of studying in high school, when everybody was focused on getting extra classes to help them with the university entrance exams, which were different back then. It was 2003, and back then we did not have a state examination, so you had to study specifically for university requirements, whatever you chose. And so all of my classmates were really studying hard and spending hours with extra physics classes and extra math, algebra, and other words I do not remember now. But I had to study English, and I think it was quite interesting situation for me to be in. I was really the only person in my class doing that. So the choice that I made was based on the fact that I wanted to go against the grain. I felt like I had to do something that didn't have to do with the numbers and figures, because that was a little too abstract for me. I felt like I could not, I don't really know how to apply that,
Right.
So I loved writing in Russian, and I loved socializing, I suppose, to a certain extent. So I wanted some vocation where I would have to deal with people in my life. Didn't really know no specific view of what that could be. For a while, I wondered if I could be a journalist, but maybe I have my own view of what being a journalist means. So when I realized what it is, basically I chose, and I wanted to study English. It was interesting. It was easy enough for me. Basically, languages, Russian and English, was easy. I was an avid reader, and I wanted to continue that. I wanted to be doing what I love doing. So the pedagogical university was, I think, sort of an easy choice for me to pursue a degree where I would be dealing with English, dealing with language, and also somehow with people. So it's a humanity-based degree that felt like I could do it.
I'm presuming, Anna, that you already spoke English at that point when you decided to go for that in that direction.
I was. I think I thought that I could speak English, but then the first day. So for the last year of high school, I was enrolled in a pre-course at my university where I chose to study at Moscow City Pedagogical University. So for a year, I had to attend like two types of classes to get prepared for their examinations specifically. And so on the first day when I came to like a speaking skills class, we had grammar and speaking and reading. Extensive sort of, not so much intensive, mostly reading class. When I first came to the speaking class, I was shocked how far behind anybody else I was.
Oh,
because
really?
All of the people, because all of the people in my group, my future university mates, they were coming from an entirely different background. They were coming from schools and classes that specialized in language. And
of course,
I came from a background of specializing in maths, and in my school I was good at English, but you come out to university education and suddenly you're exposed to such a variety of people that makes you become more humble, I think. It definitely was a big shock for me, and put a lot of pressure. So I studied a lot to reach a level that would actually allow me to enroll in that university.
Oh, great. And then after university, I know that you started as a primary and secondary school teacher in Moscow. What was that experience like? And did you decide that you wanted to teach? You must have decided that you didn't want to teach primary and secondary students, because you then moved on, didn't you?
Yeah. It was another interesting story. So that university, kind of a contract of sorts that you were signing with the school when you started with the college. When you started, was that after you graduate, you will work for a certain number of years. I don't remember how many. You will work in a Moscow school. So this is sort of an incubator for English language teachers for Moscow schools, that university.
Right.
So I kind of knew that I would have to be a teacher, but I thought, I can do it for a couple of years and then we'll see what happens. But towards the end of studies, we studied for 5 years back then. In the fourth year, we had to do a obligatory teaching practice, like a month in a school where they send you, they have a contract, and there is a supervisor, teacher, trainer of sorts, and you go through the pedagogical in-class experience, applying your knowledge that you learned for 3 years. And that was the time that made me fall in love with teaching. So basically,
oh wow,
after the very first class, not knowing what's going to happen, I was prepared, of course, and I had a very nice supervisor at that school. She was very helpful. She sat in our class, and we had a group, maybe 6 or 7 students who were also doing the teaching in that school with different classes.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had some nice feedback sessions together. We had planning sessions together. We planned some extracurricular activities for the kids at school. And so that month was so amazing that right after I finished the obligatory month, and we had to go back and study because we were still students. But what I did instead, I finished that teacher training on let's say 31st of September. Mm-hmm. And in the end of October, I was already employed almost full-time at a private school near home. So in my neighborhood, I started looking for schools where I could work, because I really, really fell in love with teaching, and specifically was a middle school, I think, for the most part.
Yeah.
So it was quite unusual. For the last 2 years of my study at university, I was studying full-time and also working full-time at that school.
Oh, wow. That must have been difficult to fit in everything.
To be honest, I don't remember being swamped so much as I guess I had so much energy back then, and I really enjoyed the challenges, and everything was new, and I really wanted to make my own activities, make my own vocabulary cards, make my own crosswords. It was 2006 or 7, I guess. So it was pre-online world. At least for me, I was not connected in any way. So it was a very creative time, I think. And maybe that's maybe exactly what I fell in love with in this profession of education, is that there is a lot of opportunity for you to be creative and express yourself in different ways, and also communicate, right? So
of course, yeah,
that was very nice.
Great. But then you moved from working with children towards working with young adults, teenagers at university. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. The move from school happened due to administration issues. Mm-hmm. So I think now, especially now that I got to start studying for my second degree, and it's related to managing and leading educational institutions. So kind of administrative side of education.
Yeah.
And I definitely can see how important it is to have good administration, to offer a support for teachers, to understand what sort of problems teachers have, what kind of help they need, how to try and create the environment. So those things, I did not receive that at that school, and it was quite a shock for me. And basically, I had to quit because I couldn't deal with the environment. It just didn't feel right. There was a change in administration, and so for a year it went very smoothly, and then the next year, the director of studies changed, and the environment flipped entirely. And I just did my best to complete, and then I had to go. I was kind of disillusioned even in school, in the whole school education, because of that. So it was a little sad for me, because after that, maybe for about 6 months or 4 months, I questioned whether I should teach.
Oh, really? That's
I blogged.
A shame. Yeah, I think
I
think school leadership is so important, isn't it? Really, as you've just sort of shown, I think it can really change the feel of a place, and whether it's a good place to work, etc., as a teacher, and a good place to be as a learner as well, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So I was questioning my choices, and because I graduated, so basically I graduated in the summer I graduated from university. I got my degree, and in September, in October, I finished my contract and I quit. And until February, I guess, 4 or 5 months, I just had tutoring classes, some teaching some kids, but really thinking, what can I do? Maybe I can go some other direction. But luckily, I got a place at Moscow State University physics faculty to teach physics majors, and that was the beginning of my life as a university teacher, which is, I think, this is important because this is exactly the right age range, the right place where I feel like I fit. I think I know how to talk to these people. I think I can make good connections. I think I can relate in terms of academic goals, like I can explain better. So maybe that's the godsend of sorts. The job.
Of course. And you ended up there teaching physics undergraduates and postgraduates, which ties in with what you were studying before as well. So is that the reason why you got the job, or the reason what attracted you to the job?
I never thought if that could be part of the reason why I was given the job. No, I think
right.
I think the boss, very wonderful woman. So once again, the manager, the person in charge, is a decisive factor.
Yes.
In the environment and in hiring process as well, shall I say? So I think she was just interested. She was keen to have some fresh blood, some nice, good energy in the department. Other teachers were middle-aged, were on the older side even, so they had already worked at the faculty for many years at that department. But I think I was the youngest for a year or a couple of years. I was the youngest, and I was 24, maybe 23, so pretty young. It was amazing. I'm very, very, very thankful for the chance.
And I read,
and it was quite and again, it was a challenge.
I read on your website.
Yeah, go ahead, Graham.
Sorry, I think there's a little bit of a delay. I read on your website that you became involved in creating materials and textbooks while you were there. They were about physics, I guess, English and physics. Was that right?
Yeah, partly true, because I was teaching a range of students, so freshman students, that was general English, physics with the ESP side of it. So it was just preparation. Then second year students, that was the beginning of ESP classes, and that's materials that were provided, old school, 1970s, 80s, from the vaults of the library. That was already very. It was information from my physics textbooks and in the language of physics. Thermodynamics and so on, astrophysics and so on, being able to talk about the formula, to talk about the processes in English, right? So it was a challenge for me to understand that to a certain extent, because obviously this is a university, so the language, I had to learn that area of language, but in addition, I had to kind of understand where does my knowledge of physics support me and where does it stop, because in some ways the content, for example, the text itself, the text that we had to study, sometimes I understood to a certain level, and then I had to ask my students to explain it to me, which is, I suppose, helpful for them, but maybe like.
So I'm guessing, Anna, that you actually ended up.
I'm a curious person, and I was very curious.
Sorry, I'm guessing you ended up learning quite a lot more about physics during that period of time.
I fell in love with astrophysics. I had my favorite astrophysicists, and some BBC shows that I watched just to understand what's happening. So Yeah, definitely. I got a new interest in my life at that time.
That's great.
On a
And
very layman level.
of course, but now really interesting. And then you ended up moving to Japan, which is quite a change from what you were doing. How did that come about?
That longest and most important story in my in my talk today. So in 2011, I'm gonna start from the start.
Sure.
In 2011, I got into a car accident.
Oh.
And I had a brain concussion, which so I had to stay in bed for, I don't know, 3 weeks maybe. I couldn't go to work, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And in that time, I used I had free time. I didn't need to create new materials. I didn't feel like I could do that, but I couldn't just do nothing. So somehow I got on Twitter in 2011 because of that.
Okay.
And on Twitter, I started building my personal learning network back then.
Yeah.
And I started meeting people, like so many of people from the ELT community. And I met Chuck Sandy.
Oh yeah.
And Barbara Hoskins Sakamoto, and Stephen Herder. And in 2011, they were launching International Teacher Development Institute, ITDI. And somehow I was in the team of writers for their materials for their course of English for teachers. We had Chuck found a team of teachers from all over the world just through Twitter. From Indonesia, from Brazil, from Russia, everywhere. And we worked together. So basically in 2011, I opened the door, or rather the door opened. And I saw suddenly from my bed in the south of Moscow, I found that there is a world of ELT out there, which I had not known about. I knew nothing about that. I did not know about the conferences. I did not know about the opportunities to teach English abroad. And then I started participating in different events, conferences, going places, just out of curiosity, out of interest, because I had energy, because I realized that this is exciting. This is exciting.
Of course.
And in 2013, I went to Japan to present. And Barbara and everybody else was Japan-based, my Japan-based and Korea-based friends. We met, and many others, too many to name. And so when I was there, I felt like, well, it would be so amazing if I could work here. And I remember very clearly the exact moment in the train where I said that, and when Barbara said, well, why not? Why can't you? Let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. If you dream about it, why not? She was so matter of fact about it, and I thought, well, you know what? I like this style. Maybe it suits me. Indeed, why not? And so I returned, and then started thinking about it seriously, and not without the help of my friends from Japan.
Yeah.
I got that first job. I got that first job in an international school in Tokyo, and I moved in 2015.
Wow, wonderful! And how long were you there in Japan?
From 2015 to 2019, so that must be 4 years.
4 years, and I think you did lots of different things, didn't you? When you were in Japan, you got involved with teacher research, teacher development, built a reflective practice community, designed courses on social media safety and culture. It's quite a lot of different things.
Yes, it was a lot. It's true. Now, when I think about it, I was very productive, and I think I had a lot of, I had a lot of energy, and the move energized me in that professional way a lot. And the environment, again, I just can't help thinking how important it is. The environment and the community there enabled all these things, made them possible.
And how did you enjoy living and working in Japan, in Tokyo in particular?
It was lovely. It was so wonderful. It was my first. It's pretty far, like
yes.
I lived in Moscow. I lived in Moscow my whole life until then, and then suddenly one day I say to my parents, "I'm gonna live in Tokyo." Pretty far.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And it was so it was I'm pretty proud of myself because it was everything, every possible challenge that you could imagine was my challenge, right? It was a different language, it was a different culture, it was living by myself. It was a new job, new context. It was my first job teaching English to students who do not understand my language, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so it was not easy, especially in the first year, because for the first year I worked in high school, international high school, and I did not have, most of my colleagues were Japanese. I had maybe three. I had a boss, Peter, who's Australian, very wonderful person, supported me a lot, and a couple of colleagues, other teachers. So in the immediate workplace, I did not have a lot of community, and the people there, my colleagues, they are, I don't know, married people with children. So our lives were a little different. It was not possible to hang out after work because they had to go back home. So it was also a little bit difficult in that regard. But then again, students were great, and I had again a nice chance to express myself creatively. You already mentioned the courses that I could design. I was actually encouraged to do that. I had to, like Peter asked me, we need you to teach something. We need you to design some courses that would engage your students, and they would learn English through basically in a clear way, right? Through content. What can you do? What are you interested in? And that sort of environment is very good for me. So it was nice. I created a library at that school. For extensive reading classes. I was hoping to kind of launch a long-standing extensive reading program for students at that school. I was working on designing it, but then I got a job at a university, and that was a better path for me, I thought.
Yeah, you've already said that's the age group you feel more comfortable teaching. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so how did things develop? Sorry, how did things develop from there then?
And then I got the job at Rikkyō University, with a wonderful place. And I guess those 3 years at that university were exactly the time when I was most productive in many different ways. And there's many reasons for that, but I think the biggest reason is the fact, the structure, the organization of the department. It was an English discussion department, so we taught English discussion to freshman students, different levels, but same class. They worked within a unified curriculum, so we all were doing the same class at the same time in different rooms to different students. And Rikkyō University is quite large, quite big. And my colleagues in that department, there were about 45 of them, maybe 45.
Right.
So that's a lot of teachers. And me, it was the first time that I had a staff room with so many teachers. And it was a very international environment. We had Japanese, Chinese, a few Russians, not one. um, South African, probably Jamaican, definitely, New Zealand, Australia, so all over.
Wow.
It was a very interesting place to be, you know. And teachers were different. Teachers formed their own groups, of course, but also we had a lot of teacher development sessions, professional development organized by the school, and that helped me, of course, to understand how the program works, but also it helped me think of my own ways and kind of be on my toes. It kept me on my toes in terms of how I want to develop, because among 45 teachers there was a lot of this sort of research and action, teacher energy, if you know what I mean.
And it was there that you became involved. You became involved with teacher research, was it?
Yeah, we had to do some projects every year and publish the results of those projects.
Yeah.
So that was just a very good experience, very nice way to organize professional development at your department, I think, now. Because people, some years, the research had to be kind of more within the boundaries of what they expected us to do. Then in my last year there, in my third year, I was free to choose what's interesting for me. So I chose mentoring, organizing mentoring and teacher support systems in that sort of environment. So it was just so open and so interesting, and there was time allotted for that, and there was an opportunity to publish within the department, because they published their own journal. So it was a really great experience.
Excellent. And then about 4 years ago, Anna, I think I'm right in saying you then decided to leave Japan and moved to Vietnam. What prompted that move?
Yes, indeed. That was 4 years ago. What prompted that move was actually it was a result of another involvement in teacher development in Japan. Because I attended JALT conference. This is the big conference for English language teachers in Japan. I attended it annually every year. And I was a member of a teacher development special interest group, because teacher development is, by and large, my biggest interest, and has been my biggest interest. My own and other teachers, for other teachers as well. And so in that, within the conference, at some point, I learned about teachers helping teachers group. I guess maybe they have their own SIG, special interest group. I can't remember now. But teachers helping teachers just sounds exactly like something I wanted to be doing back then. And so the idea for that group was that they organized teacher workshops and conferences, some events in countries in Southeast Asia, mostly Southeast Asia, where teachers from different universities from Japan would come and give a day of workshops, let's say, or a couple of days, and would maybe travel around the country a little bit. So for a couple of days or for a week, with the help of people on the ground, there were these trips organized: the Philippines, Laos, Vietnam, Bangladesh, I think. I'm not sure, but I found out about it in 2007, late 2017, I think. And so in March 2018, I joined Teachers Helping Teachers event in Vietnam. So I applied with some ideas for workshops about reflective practice, which I had been doing regularly for 4 years by then, I think, maybe 3 years. So on the topic of my interest and sort of competence, I suppose. And then I joined that trip, and I went to Vietnam for the first time in 2018. And we presented a group of teachers presented in locations, I believe, two different cities. One in the south of Vietnam and one in central Vietnam. We gave different workshops. They organized activities for us and wonderful food and treated us so well. And so that was a short trip, 6 days, maybe 7 days. But I just fell in love with the country. I fell in love with the energy of teachers and the students as well. It seemed like a big contrast for me at that time with the Japanese students. And I'm not saying it in any negative way, describing Japanese students, because I love teaching them as well. But the classroom itself just felt very different. So I felt like it was a good time to move. And when I lived in Japan, I traveled in Southeast Asia quite a lot as possible in my university break time. And I felt like in general, Asia is the right place for me to be. And I thought that Southeast Asia feels like this could be exactly the right place, or at least I felt the need to explore what teaching is like in places like Malaysia, places like Thailand or Vietnam. And Vietnam was the choice that I made.
Great. And you are teaching at a university school of business, I believe, and you're teaching those adults business or English as well?
Good question. I'm not teaching business, of course.
Okay.
Although this is a business school, I teach in a program, which is a program of Western Sydney University in Vietnam. So they have their campus. It's been open for 12 years maybe or so.
Right.
And they offer programs, degrees, bachelor's degrees and master's degrees with a certificate from Western Sydney, Australia.
Okay.
So the students are business students, but in the beginning I was teaching like prep courses, EAP, to help students reach the required level. Those who could not take IELTS and get the desired numbers on paper, would help them in the intensive courses. And then I was also teaching academic skills, so like a wider, not language skills, but a wider range of necessary skills like research and critical thinking and writing different genres and debating as well. So and recently I started teaching business academic skills. It's an interesting combination of business communication and academic skills. Basically, a variety of academic and soft skills, which students in an international Western, let's say, Western school, university environment need to develop. A lot of teamwork, a lot of autonomous learning, a lot of writing of different sorts of things, research, referencing, this sort of thing. So that's my current job.
Okay, very interesting. And what about living in Vietnam? How do you find that, and how does it compare to living and working in Japan, apart from what you've already told us about, of course?
Well, I love Vietnam very, very, very much. Of course, I love Japan too. And in Japan, in fact, I had a much bigger reach in the community, in the teacher community. I had a lot of friends there, obviously from Rikyo, which I said it was just nice, very nice. So many friends, and the adult friends, and all over Japan. Very nice, big community, and moving me in the nice, active direction in terms of professional development. So, and if I compare that element of community, here in 4 years, I have not managed, unfortunately, to develop a acquire, find that community. It doesn't, of course, it doesn't mean that there are no people who are interested in teacher education or development. This is absolutely not the case, because Facebook, which is huge in Vietnam, is used for all different purposes, including, of course, for connecting teachers. Though it has huge groups of Vietnamese teachers sharing resources, discussing, posting, researching, everything. But somehow I'm not sure how I'm not there. I don't know. It just didn't happen in a natural, organic way, that it happened before. So not yet, at least. But I did attend a conference, and also COVID happened. Let's not forget.
Of course,
COVID happened in these 4 years.
That's about 2 years of the last 4, isn't it? Really, practically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And here in Vietnam, we did have, later than everybody else in 2021, but we had in Ho Chi Minh City quite a serious lockdown where for 4 months I did not leave my apartment. And online teaching truly is great when it's great, but it does isolate teacher, I think.
Of course.
At least it did. Maybe it did so for me. I'm not sure. But anyway, I did attend a face-to-face conference this past weekend, a week ago, and it was great, I have to say. I remembered the feeling of being in a face-to-face conference.
That was the first time, was it? Since the pandemic, the first time you've been to a face-to-face conference?
Yes. It was the first time since maybe February 2019.
Wow.
Since I moved to Vietnam, that was the first time. So it did give me some thoughts about whether I want to continue this, because the conference here very quite interesting, and I enjoyed, and I learned some, and I saw presentations that made me think, and people, what's best, even though I don't have community, or feel like I have community in the way that I imagine it to be, or the way I knew it to be in Tokyo, people here are so genuinely interested in engaging with other teachers, so genuinely interested, and so many a few teachers in the break just started talking to me, and immediately they started talking about their schools, and it's so easy to have a conversation with them really about education, about their schools in some faraway province, or about the research that they're planning to do. And it's just it's a nice environment, I think. And English language education in Vietnam is really burgeoning, and it's bubbling. It's happening. And like I said, in 2018, I saw that spark in teachers' eyes, and they really wanted to consume as much information as they could, and it's still happening. So 5 years later, it's still happening. So if I compare that, I did. Then, of course, the biggest difference is in Japan, I did live alone, and here I do live with my partner. Lived in Korea back then, so it makes it makes a difference. It makes a difference.
Of course.
So wonderful food, friendly people, and when I say friendly, I really truly mean it. So kind and great, and everybody wants to help and support. I don't know, just a very nice vibes. Beaches, there's a lot of them. It's very easy to go, very easy to travel in the country as well. And country has a lot to show and a lot to see.
Of course.
So I love Vietnam.
Wonderful. And then recently you've started studying for a second master's degree, and clearly you're an advocate of lifelong learning, but what drew you back to studying again, and what are you studying exactly?
Yeah, I had been thinking about, maybe since I moved to Vietnam, or maybe even a little bit before, interested in how exactly higher education works, in terms of how it's managed and what are some principles behind it and how it's led, how it should be led. So that had been on my mind for a few years. I did some free Coursera courses, Future Learn or something, on the topic of leadership and education. So I guess my mind was moving towards that. It was in that direction for a while, leadership and education. And I was looking for programs. I was looking for maybe some certificate courses that are more manageable in terms of finance than a full-blown degree. And then suddenly, when the right time comes, it does.
Of course.
For a thing. And so my employer, they started a new program. So they had MBA program going, and I am a teacher in that program as well, with the academic skills element, supporting students, MBA students, and they just started a new master program, Master in Education in Leadership and Management. And when I found out about that, I wanted to be involved somehow, and so that's how I ended up studying it. I was and am in the first batch of students doing that program in this course. So that's how it happened. It's just what I was looking for just fell into my lap.
That sounds great. And what is it about educational leadership that appeals to you? I mean, you've already hinted at it previously, that that your own experience has shown you that it's so important and it changes the atmosphere, etc. But what is it that you think it really attracts you from a personal point of view?
This is a good question that I had to answer. I think exactly that question
in the interview.
Signing up for the program. So my answer is somewhere on the paper in some room. No, but the thing is, I have been interested in professional development and teacher development, right? And reflective practice and creating community and maybe even creating community within a workplace. So let's go back to those Facebook groups that I just mentioned. So they're groups, Vietnam-based or international groups, and we have seen these groups develop from the beginning, right, of Facebook. In 2011, when I joined Facebook for ELT purposes, they were Facebook groups already, and they of course are a great place for teachers to get connected from various contexts, from various backgrounds, and share. Right, we all know that.
Yeah.
And I guess from being excited about that element of that sort of community, I slowly started to pay more attention to the community that can be or should be created within a workplace, and specifically at university. So schools are maybe a different beast that I don't know very well. I only worked for 2 years. It was 15 years ago, and I didn't have a great experience, right? So
right.
Maybe it stayed somewhere at the back of my mind. But I did have a great experience in terms of teacher community at Rikkyo University in Tokyo. There was some ups and downs. There were some things that I didn't quite agree with, but I did have I thought about it a lot, of what happened, and I discussed it with other teachers who wanted to consider those elements too. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that at the moment, I'm interested what needs to be done. What are the factors that can enable creating an environment for teachers, for lecturers at university that would make the space for them to learn together. So a space for them to be connected, like on Facebook, but in a meaningful way for that particular context, if that makes sense. The teachers who are not specifically lecturers, who may come from different departments. My university here is quite small, so just the beginning stages. They're developing, they're hiring more lecturers, but we don't have a staff room, so we don't have a place to talk. We have a room where we sometimes meet. If you're lucky, you know somebody but a lot of the teachers feel isolated, I feel like. And from the few conversations that I had with some teachers who I do know, that's my feeling. So I think that it's up to the leadership and up to the management to understand that having that lecture community, research community, it doesn't have to be research, but some sort of space, right? Creating a common shared space, physical space, information space, I don't know, emotional space for lecturers to be together. It would be good. And I don't know if in higher education that's common, and I'm very happy to find out.
Right.
So I hope that maybe my studies in this master's, I'm studying different things. I'm studying some business aspects, some management aspects, some financial aspects, because apparently that's also important when leading educational institutions. That's a tough one for me, but I'm learning. I'm happy to learn. But yeah, I'd like to understand how to create, how to make university a good place, not only for students to be, but also for lecturers to be, and be a good selling point. This is a good place to work,
right,
for teachers.
And is it the fact that there isn't a sort of shared space, a staff room, as you were talking about before, is that cultural to Vietnam, do you think, or cultural to higher education in Vietnam, or have you yet to sort of discover that?
I'm yet to discover that, but I want to say that I think that my Rikyo experience was different. So that stands out. I don't know yet, and I would like to research that more, definitely, how these spaces are organized in other universities, small and big, and small to compare the right range. But if I think about Moscow State University, my first university job in Russia, right? For 5 years, I worked there, and we had one little room, literally one room for 30 teachers, exactly because there was very rarely a time when all of us would be together at the same time in that room, because people teach their class, they come in, they leave. Sometimes you come to university building, teach your class, and never need to go to that staff room,
Right.
So that was that particular of physics faculty of my university? I don't know. I don't think so, to be honest. So I have a feeling that maybe unless educational leaders in higher education, unless they organize those spaces, probably the natural way is this way, the flexible way, the kind of part-time, quote unquote, part-time way of organizing lectures work. You don't want, maybe there's this idea that this is not school, you don't need to have your desk, you don't necessarily have a lot of handouts or I don't know, supplies. There's different sort of education is expected, and so the environment needs to be different. I don't know yet. This is exactly what I'm interested in researching more about.
Interesting. So of all the aspects of your master's, that's the area that most appeals to you, is it?
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if I'll have a chance to really get into that. We have the final project. It's called professional project, so kind of problem solving. I don't know yet the details, but I think it must be some problem solving project. So maybe I will try to focus on that for my school. But also I'm planning to apply for a research grant, a Japanese, in fact, research grant, just to have a more comprehensive research about exactly that. Find some universities and explore their spaces. How do they create those spaces for lectures, if they do, right? Yeah, I suppose that's my track at the moment.
And do you see yourself in the medium term, once you've completed this, moving more towards academia, moving more towards leadership in a university environment? Is that something you'd like to do?
This is a good question.
Well, you
but I
haven't
suppose I should
decided
be
yet.
asking myself more often. More often, yes. I have to say that starting master's study, and I'm doing it offline on campus. So it's the same campus where I work, so it's very convenient.
Of course.
But I do study on the weekends, and there's a lot of reading and writing, and it's a lot of pressure. But I realized I started in January, so I did 4 courses by now. I have finished 4 courses. And I really love it. I have to say that now I haven't studied for a month and I'm really missing it. I'm missing doing research. I'm missing doing research, like regularly having to do it. I'm missing writing, thinking about it, discussing this thing. So if there is, at the same time, I don't want to be doing academia work only. Because I really feel like classroom is the place where I need to draw ideas from. I need to draw my inspiration from. Also, I definitely know that I do need that community of teachers. Again, get the energy from them, be pushed by other teachers, have projects with other teachers. So at the moment, I have a friend in Singapore, Eunice. Hello. You're listening. She's my research buddy at this point, and that I find it necessary for me. So maybe that's why I'm so focused on this teacher community, is because I feel like I need it myself. So in a way, I'm trying to do something that would help me in the end.
And what about Vietnam? Do you think you've found your place in the world? I mean, you were saying definitely Southeast Asia. But do you see yourself continuing Vietnam for the near future or for the long term? Or are you open to move again to somewhere else?
Yeah, this is another difficult question, Graham.
So I'm sorry. I'm sorry for asking you all these difficult questions, Anna. You can just not answer it if you prefer.
No, I like thinking out loud, and of course I think about it a lot. At the moment, this is a good place for me to be. I'm doing my studies. I love the place, like I said. Like there's nothing that repels me in some way. Repel is a strong word, but you know what I mean. There's nothing that's pushing me away. Mostly everything is pulling me in. And I feel like I could be useful in my workplace as well. I think this for me is an important feeling to have.
Of course.
I feel like I could make it better, and I would like to do something to make it better for the lecturers, for example, for students as well. But at the moment, somehow my focus is on the lecturers. And so, with that said, I do have the itch to travel and try teaching in other locations as well. I'm really interested in communicating with teachers from other contexts, broadly speaking, other contexts, right? Different continents, for example. And that was my idea back in 2011 and 2013, when I first went to Asia, to Japan, and I met these teachers who were teaching English in an absolutely different classroom than I had been teaching in Moscow. And it just was so exciting to me. And I visited some of the classrooms in Japan, and I visited some of the classrooms in Korea. Back then, classrooms of my friends, and I took a lot of notes, and I just learned a lot. So being a class, observing a class of a teacher from a different country, without any strings attached necessarily, right? I was not giving them any feedback, or I did not have any job attached. It was just for my own learning. So from 10 years ago, I had this idea that wouldn't it be great if I could go to classrooms on different continents, and if I could see what teachers, how learning happens, how teaching happens in Mexico, in South Africa, in Australia, in France and so on. So that is still on my. It's probably falling to the bottom of my to-do list just because I'm getting older, but still not. I'm not crossing it out. So I'd love to have an opportunity to live and teach somewhere else for sure. Yes. So maybe that's a long way to say. I think I will at some point feel like I have to go.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think it's a great attitude to have an open mind like you do, and it sounds a lot like you're very good at spotting opportunities and grasping them whenever they come up, and following your kind of intuition and your feeling about what is good for you to do, which is a great talent or skill to have. It certainly comes through after talking to you.
Thank you. I feel probably that intuition plays a big part in my life. It's true. I'd like to be able to keep hearing it, to remember that I have it, and I'd like to keep hearing it.
It certainly sounds like it's something that you use a lot of, and so I don't think something like that will go away. I think it's something that's probably very much a part of you.
Yeah, maybe strengthens too. Graham, I remember to talk about gamification.
Oh, yes, you're right. Tell me about it. Of course.
So, one of the first courses that I studied in my program, again, this is Master of Education, Leadership and Management. One of the first courses was contemporary people management. So this is a human resource sort of course, but in a little bit wider context, human resource element. And our lecturer, we had one online class once, and our lecturer invited an expert, let's say, a person who created an online learning platform company. Maybe it's company is the right word. Offering adult education classes in critical thinking, some skills. So not English classes, but some skills for business and skills for success. Let's go this way. By the way, soft skills education is very counseling, and in general, the broadly area of soft skills is very, very popular in Vietnam.
Right, of course.
Online, offline, and so on. And so the session was based on how digital people management differs maybe from face-to-face people management, and the elements of organizing work, because the employees in that company are working online, right? Yeah. And so a lot of it. My classmates in that program are teachers themselves, for the most part. Some of them are administrators at the university, but most of them are teachers. So a lot of them were interested in the aspect of just digitalization of education, right?
Yeah.
And in the conversations in that class, the idea of gamifying, I don't know if they use the word quite how you would use it, gamifying the class, gamifying that online classroom, and also sort of gamifying, I don't know if that's the right way to put it, the environment, tracking systems for employee for work, basically from the employee and manager perspective. So it was an unusual callback.
That's interesting. I definitely think gamification can really play a part when something is a little bit dry or has a tendency of being a bit dry. You can use certain aspects of gamification, certain elements of that you find in games, to just inject a little bit of fun or a little bit of lightheartedness. It doesn't need to be, everything doesn't need to be so serious, etc. And those, so long as you don't overdo it, I think those people who there are people who will appreciate it, and they'll feel more motivated to participate, etc. And especially online, I think if you can add anything to any environment, but especially online, to make something a little bit more memorable or a little bit more different, I think that's where things like gamification can really play its part.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't end up, even though I did take your course and I thought about gamification, I did also, of course, get some more input on that in my life, but my interest went in another direction. But I see a lot of interest for gamifying classrooms in various ways here in Vietnam. I think this idea of classroom, motivating classroom, because there's such a big demand for English here right now. I think all ideas are very welcome, and digital elements also. So whatever is new is becoming very popular quickly here.
Yeah, I must admit that my professional life took me away from games and gamification too for a little while, and more towards sort of other areas. You can't do everything, right? And but recently I've been there's a number of people who asked me if I could do certain talks, etc., on gamification. They remembered my interest in it, and so I feel I'm being drawn and pulled back towards it a little bit more. And it is an area that I think there's so much more you can learn about. And it's also an area I think that's very still using games in language learning, I think, and gamification in language learning is an area that is still so much to explore, and so much that people haven't sort of tried to do things. I see there's a kind of small number of people doing work in that area, but it's still yet to reach a sort of larger, a greater understanding, I think.
Yeah, I agree about understanding for sure. Mm-hmm. So there you go.
Great.
Going back.
So Anna, I'm going to draw things to a close now. I just want to say I've really enjoyed talking to you. I mean, one of the main reasons why I do this show is it gives me an excuse to reach out and contact people like yourself, who I think are doing really interesting things in the world of education that I'm connected to, or to meet new people as well, and really have this sort of in-depth conversation about what you're doing and how your trajectory's been. I find it really interesting to do that, and so this gives me an excuse to probably have this kind of conversation that we would never have otherwise, because we just never find time as teachers, as educators, do we, to actually talk about this at length. So thank you very much for your time and for sharing everything with us today.
Thank you. I was very happy. It was my pleasure, and now I'm excited and thinking about whether I should also whether I can start my own podcast and also talk to teachers and make my community that way.
Yeah, well, if you would like to be a host on Teachers Talk Radio, there's a lot of they're looking for people to do that. So
all right, I'll consider
it. You go to the website and you'll find more information about it, or you can ask me if you're interested. I can put you in touch with the people who can make it happen, etc. And it doesn't have to be, I kind of do this show once every 3 weeks. I think the first Saturday of the month, someone else does it, which suits me. But you can adapt schedules to suit your time, the time you have available. There are show hosts that just do it once a month, for example. There are others that do it once a week. And it's a good community. It's a really nice way of of giving you an excuse to get in touch with teachers and being part of this PLN, as you say, sort of a community of teachers online. So definitely recommend it.
And it's very nice to hear the voices. Very nice to hear the voice. You know, we all communicate by typing. We can see the text. But voice is different. Voice is different.
Definitely. And each show generally gets around between 350 and 500 plus listens in the end, which is nice. It's nice. So think about it if you're interested and have the time, of course. Right. Sounds like you might be a little bit busy at the moment.
I do tend to get busy and busier.
As we all do.
It was lovely to talk.
Thank you.
It's time for a fresh start to language learning. Pearson Edexcel's new student-centred French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills. Through inclusive and relatable content, the new Pearson Edexcel MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. Find out more at go.pearson.com/MFL GCSE 24.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
It's the summer holidays for almost everyone, but apologies for those not quite finished yet. And the topic of money is not far from the thoughts of many. But Schools Week looks back at the year and reports that nearly 2/3 of schools increased the cost of pupil meals this year, and a large majority of schools have had to make cuts in other areas. The findings are taken from regular government surveys of school leaders and teachers, and results show that over 1/4 of schools say support with energy bills made no real difference to financial positions. The pressure of the cost of living crisis affected schools in several key ways. These included a rise in the cost of pupil lunches, which had to be passed on to many parents. Some schools also reported a decline in meal quality as providers attempted to reduce costs. Cuts to support staff and, in some cases, teaching staff. And schools struggled to comply with new statutory guidance on uniform, with many schools opting to introduce a second-hand uniform scheme to support parents. Recruitment pressures led to schools appointing non-specialist teachers for subjects such as history and technology, with many schools saying this increased workload and stress. Send pressures also increased, with 87% of those surveyed citing lack of funds and access to specialist services as the key issue. The same publication also featured a story on exam fees, as AQA, England's largest exam board, announced increases for some of its most popular GCSE and A-level subjects, by as much as 16.5%. The changes will affect the 2024 series. The article features details of increases made by Edexcel and OCR2. Jeff Barton, General Secretary of the ASCL Union, responded by saying that this latest price hike will only serve to stretch budgets even further. Exam boards are obliged to notify Ofqual of any proposed fee increases. Ofqual monitors pricing for qualifications from the not-for-profit exam boards. The Guardian covered the nomination of Sir Martin Oliver as Ofsted's next Chief Inspector by Education Secretary Gillian Keegan. A pre-appointment hearing will take place in the autumn, but Ms Keegan said Sir Martin had demonstrated exemplary leadership and praised his work in areas of disadvantage as the Chief Executive of Outwood Grange Academies Trust. Sir Martin said he was hugely privileged to be nominated and that he would work closely with the whole sector to create the best systems in all areas. His promotion comes in spite of criticism, including from Ofsted inspectors, of his trust's record on pupil suspensions and exclusions. The article goes on to highlight the issues Sir Martin may find lurking in his in-tray if he is confirmed for a January 2024 start. These include the outcome of the inquest into the death of Ruth Perry and the calls for a full-scale review of the inspectorate, including the scrapping of single-word judgments, the inspection of children's services at a time when there is a high turnover of social workers and an over-reliance on agency workers who are having to deal with heavy caseloads. He will also have to deal with media and political pressures in a role which could see him regularly in the spotlight. Finally, the BBC reports that the government will break its own deadline to provide schools in England with guidance on policies for transgender pupils. The guidance has been promised before the summer break, but is delayed because the Attorney General for England and Wales has advised parts of the guidance may be unlawful. The guidance was expected to address what schools should do if a child wanted to change their name or use different pronouns, and whether to involve parents. Ministers were considering advising against allowing social transitioning in schools after a 2020 report found that it was not a neutral act, and more information was needed about its outcomes. The Attorney General, however, has said that an outright ban would be unlawful. Ministers now have to decide what to do next: compile lawful guidance or contemplate changing the law altogether. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
This is 2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello, this week we're going to talk about a couple of shortcuts and hacks that can make life a little easier. This may not be as innovative as some of my past life hacks for teachers, like drinking noodles, but here are a couple of things that may make a difference to your use of media in the classroom. First up, if you aren't already riding it, get on the Wakelet wave. Wakelet is a free way to save, organise and share content. Create collections of web pages, videos and basically anything with a web address under one topic. Once done, you have a shareable link to your collection. Use it to organise your lesson, flip a lesson or create revision collections, just to throw a few ideas out there. This next hack is one of my favourites. I love using YouTube to support learning. Not only can it help keep pace in a lesson, but also it's a great reference afterwards for pupils to refer to. My biggest gripe with it though is that pesky advert you can't skip that always decides to play when you're in full flow. Here's a secret that works nearly all of the time. When preparing your lesson, you will have watched the clip anyway to ensure it's appropriate, so just before you copy the link into your presentation or Wakelet, type this on the end: and t equals 1. That's the ampersand, or the wiggly and, lowercase t, equals, and the number 1. Now copy the URL with and t equals 1 on the end, and your clip will start 1 second in. Not missing any content, but skipping the adverts at the start. No need to thank me. Show your gratitude with a follow and tell us what you want to know about tech. I'm Steve Woods, and that was 2 Minute Tech.
2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio. You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.